afternoon, everybody, and welcome. My name is Caroline Colas, and I am your host today on the Positive Psychology Hour, a series that we do in partnership with the Whole Being Institute. And today we're going to be discussing foundational positive psychology practices to incorporate into everyday life with Lena Lissitskaya. In this webinar, Lena will share the foundational positive psychology concepts and tools from a workshop she designed for emerging adults. I feel like I'm an emerging adult, so I'm very excited to hear what this workshop is going to be about. We're going to be exploring how the pandemic has made many of our situations more similar to those emerging adults, our teen and tweens and young adults that we have in our lives. We're going to learn how to craft goals by setting intentions, practicing gratitude, working with the ideal self, and tapping into strengths to activate our flow states. Lena Lissitskaya worked as a change management and program management expert in sales for the software industry for over 15 years in settings ranging from a technology startup to established companies. She is also a certified mindfulness instructor trained in mindfulness-based stress reduction and Koru mindfulness. She was a teaching assistant for 2 years at Whole Being Institute after completing a certificate in positive psychology, and she has served as a wellness advisor at Harvard College, teaching mindfulness and positive psychology workshops. A native of St. Petersburg, Russia, she has a master's degree in psychology as well as in linguistics. Welcome to the call, Lena. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm super excited to be here and share some of my learnings with all of you and learn from you.
Yes, and you know, you asked me to do a short meditation, but I think we should have you do it. You are the mindfulness experts. Do you mind? I mean, especially MBSR, I love it so much. We offer it at the JCC as well. And I was just going to do some 3 deep breaths and sort of have people hold their belly and their chest and breathe into their belly to get into the parasympathetic nervous system. But I have a sense, maybe I'm putting you on the spot here, that you might have something a little bit more creative to share with us.
I love that, Caroline, and I actually can use some tapping into that myself. Okay. So I would really appreciate if you get us going.
Okay, I'll get us started. Everyone, what I'd like you to do is place one hand on your chest and the other hand on your belly. Now, for the very first moment, please just notice which hand is rising and falling. More prevalent. For some of us, I know for me, it's my chest that's rising. Just take a moment to notice. Don't change anything. Don't interfere. Yeah. Breathing in and out. So the challenge with chest breathing is that it doesn't get us into our parasympathetic nervous system. So what we want to do is breathe like the babies do. Let's breathe into that bottom hand for a moment. We can breathe into both, but just have a moment of sensing, can I also breathe into my bottom hand? Yeah. Now my chest is still rising and falling, but what I'm going to do is just see if I can calm it down and breathe a little bit more into my belly, and then allow the chest to be involved as well. Yeah, nice. A couple more times. And you can do that anytime you need to relax a little bit more, or you're feeling a little bit tense. All right, you might hear my dogs. I'm going to just close. Len, I'm going to spotlight you and have you talk a little bit, and I'm going to close the door because my pups are wanting to breathe with us too.
Love it. Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you for this lovely introduction. I definitely needed those few breaths. Let me share my screen and we'll get going. Okay. So today's objective is really, I divided them in two parts. I want us to learn about emerging adults and reflect on the pandemic impact and see if we kind of see the similarities between the two. And on top of that, I want to remind us of some basic principles and practices of positive psychology. Sometimes the most basic and the most simple things are the ones we need most reminders about. So in 2016, originally, I have designed positive psychology workshop for emerging adults. I have presented it in 2017 at International Positive Psychology Conference in Montreal. And since then, I have evolved it several times and taught it in various settings, including outside of college, which was the primary place. So on this slide, I have this poster of mine I presented back then in Montreal. And I will share with you the slides, so you will have it at your disposal. So I know Caroline introduced me and all the multiple things I'm doing. My primary job is at corporate world, but and like how come I became interested in emerging adults. So for over 10 years, I lived on campus at Harvard College as a resident wellness advisor. So it was truly unique time of my life. I lived on campus, literally among the students. Behind the wall from my apartment, I had sophomores and juniors and seniors living, knocking on my door, sometimes in the middle of the night. So I got to know them really like on a different level. Every day I was eating in the dining hall with students. My daughter, from newborn to the age of 8, lived, grew up there with me. So that was her like primary environment she grew up in. And so all along with that, as a wellness tutor, I was organizing wellness study breaks, yoga classes, mental health awareness days, and teaching mindfulness workshops. Like I was simultaneously going through my personal mindfulness exploration, which was changing so much the way I live, the way I perceive life. So I really wanted to share those tools with those students. And after completing certificate in positive psychology in Holbein Institute, I have designed this workshop. So that's kind of the foundation and where I come from and why the hell I'm talking about this. So not all of you might have heard about emerging adults, and based on like initially seeing who is on the call, I think most of us are not technically emerging adults, even though we might feel this way. So let me just explain a little bit, right? This is emerging adults is developmental stage proposed by psychologist Jeffrey Jensen Arnett. And this stage takes place between approximately 18 to 25, 29 years old. So it happens after high school, after adolescence, and before young adulthood. And this is a stage that marked by a period of identity exploration. So it is a relatively new in psychology stage. So psychologists argue a lot, like, is it the real stage? Or, and I think it's true to confirm that it's really kind of under certain condition in Western countries, in industrialized countries, that takes place. Like I personally, having grown up in Russia, haven't really fully enjoyed this stage because I did have a lot of responsibilities and at that time. So this is really exciting and unique time. It's time of change and exploration of possible life directions. Emerging adults begin to struggle with important life decisions. What career is best for me? Who is the right life partner for me? What measures of success are important to me? And the constraints and limits of childhood and adolescence are no longer present, but those individuals are not yet fully kind of acquired the adult responsibilities of family and career. So they don't have those boundaries and limits, so to speak. And during this stage, you have fewer restrictions and more opportunities to explore than in any other time of life. And with those opportunities come a lot of uncertainty. So I have a picture here of like a foggy windshield. One of my students described to me that like, that's how I feel. That's how I often feel, like I don't really know where I'm going. There's so much information coming at me. So I just thought it's like an image I could relate to a lot. This is what emerging adults themselves tell about this period of life. They say, hey, this time of my life is fun and exciting. 70% plus do say that this is time of my life is really stressful, full of uncertainty, 64%, and more than half feel anxious. So I know I've been talking for a while, so I consolidated here like all these things, you know. So it's really the time of emphasis on identity exploration. Who am I? What do I value? It's instability and frequent changes in so many spheres of life. What path most suits me? It's focus on oneself, given lack of responsibilities I just talked about, and this feeling in between, and feeling that anything is possible. So I'll pause here a little bit, and I hope I haven't lost you yet. So I'm going to stop sharing the slides for a little bit and maybe invite you to share in the chat, like, does any of what I talked about, and it doesn't have to be, but does any of these things, characteristics apply to you over the past year or year and a half? Did anything you could relate to? So let me pause for a second. And I stopped sharing the slides, Caroline.
Yeah, I see that. And also, it just feels like the pandemic has thrown us into this, into this situation of very similar to what you described emerging adults experience, that foggy windshield, right? And we had in the chat exploration and instability. Parents said, yes, it feels like that. Yeah, I can relate to some of those things. Dina, definitely focusing on oneself, attending all the JCC Wellbeing Institute webinars. And parents said, yes, again. Nancy said, I retired during the pandemic. It was exciting and also stressful. It seems to me like that's what they're saying, right? In your slides there, I'm anxious, but I'm also excited.
Right? Absolutely. And I remember actually one of positive psychology learnings, I kind of, one of the biggest kind of openings for me was how close anxiety and excitement are. It's pretty much like two sides of the same coin. And it's like where we lean in and tap is what takes the lead.
Right, and Gail was saying, I was thinking how this relates to my 26-year-old daughter, and Farron said, yes, I can relate to a sense of emergence with the foggy windshield. And Amy said, yes, we have a 23-year-old, so I'm very interested in what you have to say. And Nancy said, the pandemic was my second retirement. My first was 4 years ago, but it was the same process. Right.
So interesting. So interesting. I know for many of us during the pandemic, like forget about losing a job and having to switch to a new job. Many of us, like if we were staying in the same job, for example, the format and the structure have changed completely. And all these moving pieces, uncertainty, like when is it going to end? When all of this adds up as kind of little stresses and take toll on us. So that's why it is especially important to invest into our well-being, into our whole being, by engaging in activity that replenishes us.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we now have related to why we are similar to emerging adults. Yeah, and Bunny says, first time that I ever felt lonely, not all the time, but it was a phrase that I never felt or used before, right? So that's, you didn't mention that, but I would imagine that emerging adults also have times where they feel alone. Am I the only one feeling what I'm feeling? Especially with social media, because social media paints a different picture than what's actually happening, right? The shares tend to be everything that's good.
Absolutely. And you're bringing me to my next point, Caroline. So all these like complex things we are working through, all of them are on top of our current like high-tech world. And whether you are an emerging adult or a retiring person, you are like this expectation to be constantly connected, the texts, the tweets people are talking about, and you have to stay on top with. Some of my friends I can only learn about from Instagram, others from Facebook. So all these multiple channels, and for emerging adults especially, that's like they don't want to miss out on anything. That's like they want to stay on top of things. So all of these channels, they're writing a paper at the same time, they are texting their parents, their friends about the latest party, and they are also listening to music. If you saw them, like they always have earbuds and listening to music or podcast. So one of a lot of the tools I am teaching in this course are simple, common sense, very intuitive, but at the same time very hard to learn. And to learn them, they require to unplug a little bit, to take off your earbuds, maybe to delete Instagram for a couple days without feeling like you are missing out. So this constant multitasking is something that is very hard to kind of persuade them to set aside. So
Bonnie also said that I might add that this group here at the Whole Being Institute Positive Psychology Hour kept me afloat, along with contact from my family. And Farron said about loneliness, Zoom has brought us a big sense of loneliness when a meeting ends. I don't recall feeling lonely after an in-person meeting ends. That's an interesting comment. Yeah, it's like, Bonnie said, I agree with Farron. Yeah. You know, it is a different experience of connecting, right? Usually if I'm with another person, the entire space that we're occupying together in person changes, right? Because, you know, whether we sit down or whether we have a cup of tea, or there's an impression that they have left on the space, or our meeting has left on the space. But when I end my Zoom meeting, I just go back to my room as it was, right? The connection is across the internet. I hadn't thought of that before. That's and Lois said she agrees as well. That's kind of a very interesting comment. Yeah. I know you have more to share with us today as well.
No, appreciate all the comments. Please keep them coming. I'd love to pause for that, as it's the most valuable part. So I talked a little bit like about all this multitasking and the demand to be very productive. So really the biggest challenge with this group and with many of us, is to convince them that less is actually more, that sitting still and paying attention to your breath and creating the pause to add some intention to one's life will give them a new perspective, will replenish them and fill them up instead of them missing out on something. So all those things really taking time to cultivate optimism and connect with people around them. So they're very skeptical of what I have to offer. So it's very important to start with very simple and very foundational things and agree on them. And I usually do it through not just teaching, but more discussion. I ask them to share, and usually, like, especially if I have a couple students in the class who have something to interesting to offer, I would always bounce from that and have them talk to each other and convince each other, because that's much more effective than me obviously telling them the benefits of mindfulness that I experienced in my life. So as I mentioned, like, first of all, I want to make sure they're familiar with a few underlying very simple principles. I tell them, like, happiness, whole being, it's not a simple one-sided thing. It's a complex system with many building blocks to it. And why is it important to define them? Because if we agree on those up front, we kind of we can define what's good, what's wholesome, what's healthy ideas and practices, and separate them from bad, fragmented and unhealthy ideas and practices. And the first one is, and very simple, and I would think that most of you who come to lunch hour on positive psychology kind of take this for granted. Yeah, we can boost our well-being by intentional behaviors. But sometimes even this simple principle, it's good to be reminded, you know, as to what that is. It's not obvious to all. So the model here, this pie chart, shows what contributes to our happiness. And I think we all can relate to the role of genetic predisposition, our set points. If you had 2 kids, for example, you can tell one is just naturally more happier, optimistic, positive, another is much more easily distressed, and so on. So, psychologist Sonia Lyubomirsky says it's about 50% kind of our genetic predisposition contributes to that. And then a lot of us put enormous pressure and expectation on circumstances in life, right? We think, like, if only I have a good job, more money, then I'll be happier. And the truth is, unless you live in a war zone, you are in extreme poverty, the change to environment, while will make a little bit of difference, but it won't be as much as we tend to expect it. And so remaining 40% here is really what I'm focusing on, what we all can influence, what's in our control, is this intentional activity factors. And I want to add here, like, probably some of you are familiar with this. So this model with specific percent assigned to each area was debated a lot, and there have been additional research. So the numbers can change slightly, but the core kind of idea here is that we can impact our happiness, and we can increase it. And so this is actually a slide like I used for my corporate job, and like showing how, like, let's add in fourth quarter, let's add money to the piggy bank. But I was thinking, this makes total sense. Like, you know, if you practice mindfulness, if you cultivate optimism, nurture relationship, have meaningful goals, and devote time to them and savor life's joy, you contribute to your piggy bank of resources, happiness, and resilience. All of these activities have a compound effect on our happiness, on our whole being, and each of them counts. So it makes sense to engage in them. I'll move on to the next one, and it's that happiness is worth pursuing. I think a lot of us, I touched a little bit earlier on this, right? That we oftentimes think change in circumstances will bring more happiness. In reality, research shows that the happier we are, the more success we will have, the better relationships we will have, and more generous we will be and healthier. So it's worth investing in happiness, and we should be doing that. Let me actually move to the next slide first. Another driver, as I want to mention here, is the cultural differences, and you know, coming from Russia, coming from different culture. When I moved to the United States in 2005, like the big difference I noticed was that people smile a lot and say hi in the streets, and it really was something that like almost seemed like strange to me, like what's going on, because in Russia people in public don't express their happiness. It's not in the culture, and it's not necessarily because they are like unhappier, even though if we compare socioeconomic and political situations, like we might this might be contributing, but it's not in the culture. On the other hand, like say if you go to a Russian party, people in private, people very quickly like they are drinking, laughing, singing songs, telling jokes, anecdotes. And I remember when I was going like to visit friends here in the United States, like it felt much more reserved, and it would usually take people like quite some time to get to like sort of the type of Russian fun I described earlier. So the point is here, like the culture is very different, and as you know, in the United States and in the Western culture especially, we put like so much focus on the pursuit of happiness, which actually can even backfire us a little bit. So it's this like light touch, playful touch, pursuing the happiness, not like over obsessing about this. So, but coming back to Russians, and I've read a little bit of research also by Sonia Lyubomirsky, Russian-born American psychologist, who asked Russian parents, like, what do you want most for your kids? And most of them answer happiness. So despite very different cultural expressions, like happiness is a pretty universal value, goal, even though we might pursue it differently, and how important it is may differ from culture to culture.
Such an important reminder, you know, thank you so much, Lena, because it's like, oh yeah, you know, being happy today is going to affect my productivity. It's going to affect my health. It's going to affect my heart rate. So it's going to affect, you know, my outlook. So when we're not, it's good to pay attention and say, wait a second, you know, kind of like what Maria Serwa was talking about. What are 3 things that you're looking forward to today? And then doing those so that your day is filled with things that bring you joy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah. So moving on to the next principle that's very important kind of to be reminded of is everything is interconnected. And this is really about taking systemic view on happiness. Fulfilling our potential for well-being requires that we understand the interconnectedness of the different parts within us and the elements, as well as our interconnectedness with others and other people. So one of the foundational things I invite emerging adults to think about, and I invite you also to reflect now as we talk through that, is the kind of dimensions of well-being. And it is the spiritual, how important it is to lead a meaningful life and mindfully savor the present moment. Viktor Frankl, in his book Search for Meaning, was writing about that, that like to make it through concentration camp, like you really had to have a meaning, a strong purpose, and that's crucial. The physical part, taking care for your body, and moving, walking, sleeping, all these things. The intellectual, engaging in deep learning and cultivating curiosity, openness. Relational, which I personally find for myself as the most important aspect, and many of you spoke already in the chat about the loneliness and the impact pandemic had on that aspect, and emotional, and the importance of accepting all your emotions and reaching towards the hope, positivity, and resilience. So I will stop sharing for a little bit again and ask you to sort of assess yourself, maybe take another breath and share in the chat what is the area you feel good about today. So we talked about spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional. Like, is there one area that you feel good about today?
Elizabeth was saying a sense of balance and spiritual.
Beautiful.
I love how you focus that the relational is with yourself and as well as with others, because that's an important aspect too. Sheila was saying my work.
So, and it can be intellectual, fulfill.
I imagine, was this model when you presented to the students and at Harvard, did it make sense to them? Did they say, oh, you mean I have to consider all aspects of myself? Were they kind of surprised, or did they, because we're also talking about high achievers, right? In the folks that you were working with. So I'm just curious if they found it useful, or they were like, no, argued a bit about, no, this is more important than this. Right.
Absolutely. And I think you are bringing up a very good point. So most of those students, before they came to Harvard, like all their lives were dedicated, right, to like acing their scores, doing all these things. And so like they were thinking like, once I achieve that, like that's when I'm going to be happy. And here they are. And many of them are struggling. And oftentimes they kind of, they do struggle to unbundle, because like if you are a hot mess, you are a hot mess just like all together. And once we were talking about this, it was actually really beautiful to see that they could observe how those things interconnect, and how one can impact another, and understand those connections and eventually leverage them.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. We've had some comments in the chat. I've been suffering with a bad cold, but today I feel like I finally turned the corner. Oh, Gail, we're so excited. That's great. And then conversations. Esperanza said she's been, focusing on conversations that she had. So relationship. Amy said writing from KC. So thankful for beautiful weather and ability to breathe, refreshing, cool sunshine, filled the air. So our connection with nature, that's in spiritual, wouldn't it be? Or, yeah. It could be all of them, right? Relational, it could be emotional. Right?
Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
it goes across.
Yeah. And Ellen said creativity, awareness, positivity, and bravery when facing choices. Wow, things that she valued. And Paul, ability to focus on helping another for 2 weeks. Nice. And Susan said emotional. I'm feeling more accepting of myself. And I think it's because I am focusing more on when I have good outcomes, even about small things. So those small wins, right? So such a useful tool, Susan. Thank you for reminding us about that as well. Yeah, and I love how you use the word unbundle, right? Because you said like when we're a hot mess. So fun. Because has anybody else on the call ever felt like a hot mess? Right. And so how exactly? Thank you for raising your hands. So to unbundle that and to look at Spire as a way to unbundle that is really refreshing. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. And so you highlighted the areas. So we have emotional, we have spiritual, intellectual, physical, good feelings today. And my next question to you, what is one area that needs my attention and that maybe not as high today?
That's a great question. So because they're all interconnected, we could also say, like, what else can I use if I'm struggling with, let's say, a challenge or something? Do I need to tap into spiritual? Do I need to tap into physical? Do I need to tap into intellectual, get curious and get more information? Emotional, relational, is it something that I need to ask for help on? Beautiful. Can we see the graphic again?
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
One second.
Ellen was talking about how wise boundaries are. Yeah, this is so beautiful. Okay, so which one of these could you use and call on to help you in your current situation? I call it being overwhelmed, not often, but it does happen when I look at my desk with lots of photos and paper on its surface. Esperanza said writing, right? You can, and for me, it's relationship. I think just keeping on nurturing a constructive relationship with myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so getting more sleep. That's physical, right?
Isn't this amazing how the lack of sleep when we had a good night's sleep, we won't be even thinking how much it contributes to us feeling well, happier. When we don't get enough sleep, like we can oftentimes, the older we get, the more we emerge in the adulthood, the more we feel the consequences of not having a good night's sleep.
Yeah. Ellen said, lack of sleep relates to my motivation for physical activities. I'm trying to make it a habit. 30 days. Oh, good for you. Susan said physical. She would work on that. And Sheila, cleaning the emotionally superfluous from my mind. Wow. I love that. Sleep affects eating, physical fitness, work, interpersonal, everything. Yeah. Dina said that. Thank you for sharing that, Dina. Beautiful, everyone. So it also reminds, you said it earlier, Lena, you said common sense, right? These and how it's interconnected. And yet, gosh, it was such a great reminder. I forget how these things are interconnected and how one thing affects the other, right?
And I think that kind of, that learning here is that happiness and stresses can coexist at the same time. And all these aspects, right, they are all levers of our well-being. And when we can keep, like we can be happy and stressed at the same time, those things can coexist, impact each other, and just being able to hold that and being aware of that like helps.
Yeah, we've heard some of our speakers say, you know, you can feel more things, feel multiple things at one time. But I love what you're saying, which is that I can feel stressed and excited or happy at the same time, right?
Yep.
We're just multifactorial, we're multi-dimensional beings, right? So it's not a big surprise. And yet we have that, as Tal Ben-Shahar says, we have that one area in which we have to feel everything. So that's why it's important to allow it all, right? And resilience is not the lack of negativity, but the and. I can feel that and also feel other things as well, right? So we have Paul said, savoring the present without wandering into past or future. And Esperanza said, dancing. Oh, she's saying my number. I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so Caroline, can we break into small groups?
Sure. If there's, what I usually do is break into groups of 5, because some people want to participate in that way and some people don't. But absolutely, let me do that really quick.
Let me I would like us to go into kind of piggybacking on the spire and like how we unbundled it together right now. I want us now to kind of think of an experience when we were at our best. And others, as you listen to a story like that, and you know, it can be a story from last week, or it can be something from 20 years ago. Whatever comes to your mind, don't over engineer it, yeah, share that, and maybe weave in the spire into it. Does it make sense?
Sure. So everybody, all you need to do is accept when the breakout room comes, and then we will give you some time and also do a prompt. So let me just create that right now, and we'll send you off. And if you don't want to go into your breakout room and you'd rather stay in the main room, we'll talk in the main room as well about that. Off you go. And I'm going to pause the recording. For 1 moment.
Yeah. And I could hear Paul creativity, hope, zest, kindness, openness, like so much in just a small story. Just what happens if we start paying attention to those small things, different areas, even when some of the areas are kind of under stress and not doing as well, right? We can still celebrate others and elevate.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
And Lois shared, because, what did she say? Because using natural gifts is easy.
Right. Focusing on strengths is tapping into our natural gifts.
And so the opposite of that is when you have to do something, for example, in a job, and it doesn't come naturally to you. It can almost be painful sometimes. At least that's my experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And how often do we do that in schools, in our education system, when we kind of turn kids to focus on the areas they are least strong, right? And forget about their gifts, so to speak. So, yeah, anyone else would like to share? If not, I'll move to wrapping us up.
Anyone from the breakout rooms want to share? All right, I think we're ready.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your shares and just so strengths is a huge bringing awareness to our strengths. We heard the story from Paul, from Caroline. I shared something. All these like little nuggets, are so important. Ryan Nemich from VIA Character Institute. Yeah, I have a link here in the slide that I will share with all of you. So if you haven't done the strengths survey, I invite you to do so. It's a free survey. So using strengths, being aware of them, is really linked to increasing happiness, work satisfaction, work engagement, and please share in the chat as our last kind of prompt. I know I've been asking a lot from you, so thank you. What strengths helped you most during the last year? And I have a picture here of my daughter a few years ago holding character strengths cards: honesty, love, perseverance. This is her 9th birthday, and she was sharing with me kind of like how she was using each of these. And really, at any age, this is a huge booster to our positivity and well-being. I can see Caroline shared creativity helped her, learning, lifelong learning, curiosity, kindness, hope, resilience,
Grit,
perseverance, curiosity. And I want to thank all of you for staying curious. I had things going on that didn't go as expected with my house in the middle of the presentation. People were coming in, and so I did my best to stay focused and present. So if at times I wasn't always super clear, I'll make sure I share my slides and my email. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Caroline, thank you for holding the space. This was lovely.
Thank you for joining us. Oh my goodness, what a wonderful reminder, everyone, that of the basic tools of positive psychology and how they can both help emerging adults who are feeling excited and anxious at the same time as they look for opportunity, and they also are unsure of what to do and what to choose, and how that can be also where we are. at different points in our life. And it was just so much fun to experience that again and to see the Spire model and to see, wow, wait a minute, we could think about this and sort of what did you call it? Ungrid or unbundle.
Unbundling.
Right?
Yeah.
I love that. Unbundling. I love that. We learned something new today, right? How to unbundle and then how to reset and regroup. Anita says, lovely, thank you. And Sheila, thank you for a wonderful hour of learning and sharing. Anne said, learning and developing my knowledge of positive psychology. And Lois said, beautiful. Yeah. Nancy, thank you, Lena. Beautiful presentation, Bunny. Thank you over and over again for your wonderful, supportive, and inspiring sessions. Big thanks. Great session. And I want to remind everybody, and Lena, thank you so much for joining us. I didn't know that you were distracted, but I think that's pretty amazing that you were as clear as you were. If you had things happening, people coming in and out, I understand what that's like. I'm sure everybody else does, right? At home, sometimes you have life happens or you have plans and then life happens and other things happen. So, but I do want to remind everybody that we are here next week, of course, that we have some programs at the JCC that are happening that you might be interested in. One of them is on brain health and the latest advances in research. I will put that information for you in the chat. That's a free program. Please check our listings if you haven't already. We'd love it when you join us. And of course, the Board 30 classes that we have at the J, it's a new program. That's if you want to get in your P and you happen to be in town for physical. You are now welcome to unmute and say to our speaker how much you appreciate her. And I will okay.
Thank you both
Thanks,
so much.
everybody.
Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
this.
Thank you, Lena.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you to both of you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And we will see you next week. Bye, everybody. Thank you, Lena.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.